All right. So the next thing I want to do is mark the corners and start rounding those off. All right, so there's a couple different ways we can do that. First thing I want to do though is just mark it. What I've been using is just the grinding disc that we use on the 3-inch angle grinders, right? And this is a good size. We got our Sharpie, and all I'm doing is just set it down on the corner, slightly off the edge because you got to compensate for the thickness of the Sharpie, and just make a little mark right there, right on the corner. Sorry if I get my head in the way. Okay, so we're just going to mark those. Spin that around. And basically it's just a aesthetic, the looks, whatever looks pleasing to you as far as a corner. Main thing is I just don't want a sharp corner that you're going to get injured with, or somebody else is going to run into your panel and tear their clothes or cut themselves with those sharp edges. So we want everything to be as smooth as possible so less people get injured. Now, there's a few different ways we can do this. One way is just taking some tin snips, some hand shears, right? And coming over and cut it. Now I'm not going to cut right on the line. I'll cut off the line a little bit. But at least that will get rid of the bulk of your material, right? Fairly quick. That saves you some grinding time. Okay. Another way we can do it is with a cut-off tool. So this is a cut-off wheel. So this is a die grinder with a cut-off wheel. It's getting a little small, so I just wanted to show you how to change those. So this is a new one. So these I think are 3-inch also. So this is a 3-inch disc, right? And what it takes is an Allen wrench. So these are hex keys or Allen wrenches. There's two different type of sets. There's the American, so these are all fractional. This is American. Then there was also metric. This is a 3/16 actually. And I think it'll also work with a metric. Okay. And I just hold on to the disc. If it's too tight, you can put a wrench on the base right here. So the tools, they come with wrenches. They usually get lost. So I just usually have these paint gun tools that come with every paint gun that you can hold the shaft with to tighten or loosen, okay, if it's too tight. So you got the screw, and then you got a little washer, but the washer is different than most. One side is flat, that's your top, and then the other side has a little recess. That goes up against your disc because if you look real careful, it's got this little part of the spindle that sticks up, right? So if I was to put this on upside down and tighten it down, that disc will still spin. So I want to make sure it's going on the right direction to clamp down on that disc, okay? So new one, doesn't matter which side. Some have a little metal on them. It doesn't matter which way, to be honest. The part with the recess goes down over that, and then the screw goes back in. Take our Allen wrench. Of course, I'm going to drop it. Tighten it down, and then I usually don't use a wrench on that. I just hold the disc and snug it up. I don't want to over tighten it, so I just snug it, right? And then what I do is I spin it to make sure it's not wobbly, all right? If it's too wobbly, usually it's not seated down on the spindle correctly, all right? This one's all right. Now this is still good to use. I just wanted to show you how to put a new one on. We can use these down until they're pretty small. And I also save these sometimes for getting into smaller areas if I need to. So anytime you're using power tools like that, always wear a face shield. It's going to throw off sparks, and I can tell you firsthand, the sparks in your eyes are not fun. So make sure you got a mask on or safety glasses. If you're throwing a lot of sparks, I would recommend safety glasses and a mask. Just to be on the safe side. So face shield on, I would recommend some gloves also. And take the air off. I can do this without bumping everything. Alright, so plug in the air tool. I'm just going to throw some gloves on. these cutoff tools, now one thing to note on this, it does not have a guard on it, okay? Most of the time the guards either get taken off or they break off. If you're just learning, make sure it's got a guard on it, all right? It's extremely dangerous the way this is. Of course, I can't recommend using it like this because it is a safety hazard. Use at your own risk if you're using it without a guard, okay? With that said, let's do a little bit of cutting, okay? Hopefully you can see it. Now, this isn't going to cut a curve, so basically I'm just going to cut across. I can maybe do 2 or 3 little ones, but you can't really curve this too easily. Once it's in the metal, it doesn't want to twist, otherwise you're going to break the blade, okay? So once it's in the metal, keep it going straight, all right? So face shield down. And one thing about die grinders is they don't have a lot of torque. They don't have a lot of power. They got a fast spinning disc, so they're basically working off of RPM instead of the torque, right? So you don't want to bear down on it. You don't want to push too hard on this. Kind of let the disc do the work, right? So I'll try doing maybe a couple cuts, and I'm not going to cut right on the line. I'm going to leave a little bit to grind. Okay. And you'll notice I'm using 2 hands on the tool, which I recommend for most of these power tools. They can get away from you pretty quickly. So if you can get 2 hands on it, you're going to be a lot more secure. So you can see I cut off a big chunk. I'm just going to cut off one more chunk. All right, so I'm just going to line it up. Slowly introduce it to the metal. You don't want to jam it in there because you can, if you jam it in real quick, you can take a chunk out of that disc and then it's no good. So lightly bring it into the metal. Okay. And be careful, the metal is hot. I wouldn't do that with bare hands. You'll burn yourself. All right, but you can see we took off the majority of the metal doing that. All right, so there's 2 different ways, the hand shears, a cutoff wheel. The way that most people do it is we just take the angle grinder. This is a 3-inch, it's set up for a 3-inch angle grinder, okay? Now this one you can tell the disc is pretty gone, right? This is what they look like brand new, okay? And they always get worn out around the edges. That's where we typically do our grinding. The center may not have too much wear, but we try to use as much as we can, okay? Now there are different sizes of these, be aware of that. And they take different sizes of backing discs, all right? So there are 2-inch backing discs. I think there's 1-inch backing discs for different sizes of discs. What you're looking for though, and these just screw off. These are, I always call them roll-locks. That's a 3M name, but they're a twist-on. So you just have a little screw on there that twists into that little receptacle there. So just get it started. And I hold on to the back of it and just give it a little bit of a twist. Don't over-tighten it. You can break off the little threaded stud on there. So just snug it, okay? And you should be ready to go. One thing you're looking for is how much is hanging off the back, right? If you've got a lot of disc hanging off the back where it's a lot of a yellow exposed, when you go to grind it, it's going to want to flex and bend and it'll end up wearing through and breaking. So you want as much of the backing disc, the black part, to cover up as much as the grinding disc on the back as possible. That's going to make it a little bit more secure when you're putting a little bit of pressure on there, okay? I'll try to find one around the shop here with a different size, all right? But same thing, plug it in. These have a little safety on there, so you got to push these forward before you can pull the trigger, okay? So I'm just going to come in, I'm just going to start grinding, okay? It takes a little bit longer sometimes, but you've already typically got a grinder in your hand anyway. So let's do this side over here. Okay, so face shield down, I've still got gloves on. So what I'm doing is trying to give it a little bit of a curve as I'm grinding. And if you notice when I'm grinding, I'm not right in the middle. I'm kind of off to the top, right? Or off to the side. If you try to grind right in the middle, and sorry, the air compressor is running right now, I'll make a little bit of noise. You don't want to grind right dead center, it'll want to jump around on you, so you always want to be off center when you're grinding. Let me clamp this down real quick. That way the metal doesn't move. And I can put two hands on this. And you're just grinding it right up to your Sharpie mark right there, okay? Now you're gonna have to grind all your corners anyway, right? I was just showing you a couple different ways that it could be done. So let's swing it back around here. This is our edge that we cut with the hand snips, the tin snips. So I'm gonna do the same thing, I wanna round that off. Okay. And you want to kind of blend it in with your sides so it's a nice gentle curve. Do this one. This is the one we cut with the cutoff wheel. Put that down. Same thing. And you'll notice I'm not going full blast on these. I'm playing with the trigger a little bit to keep my speed under control. So get used to the trigger. It's going to be the same with a spray gun or all your tools. You want to be able to control that tool as good as possible. Right? And we typically don't run them full blast. Right? You want to tone it down just a little bit. All right, so we just have one more corner here. Since I already got the grinder out, I'll just grind it. Clamp it down so I can put two hands on. It's a little bit hard to get into some of the areas because I got the camera tripod set up, but let's pull that off. And there's where we're at. Okay, panels cut to size. I've got the corners all rounded off the way I want them. Last thing to do is just to drill them. All right, last thing to do is drill. So I'll set up for that. All right. Next thing I want to do, I just kind of got a couple things set up here, is I want to mark and drill my holes in the corner. Now, I always use a piece of wood underneath it. So I'll be drilling into the wood. It just kind of supports the sheet metal from getting bent because you're putting pressure down. So you drill into the wood. So this is just a sacrificial piece. We're not going to use it for anything. All right. So the next thing I want to do is, you want to make sure the wood is right underneath where you're going to drill. Now you can just eyeball it where you want it. It's just so they're all the same. You can come in and measure it out, let's say maybe an inch in. So somewhere like that. Just come around. Somewhere in there, I'm just kind of making a little X right there where it's going. Just spin this around, mark that as well. All right. Now that I've got my corners marked, I'm going to take a hammer. This is a ball peen hammer. Center punch, so you'll notice the end is sharp. And what that's going to do is give us a little mark where the drill bit is going to go into. Otherwise, the drill bit wants to kind of wander around. This will give it something to hook into and stay in the place we want it. So just bring it, put it on my mark, give it a little hit right there just to leave a little mark. You don't need to get too crazy. It's just a little mark. All right. Got my wood underneath there, and I'm just using a cordless drill. I don't know what size this is, 3/8 or so. To operate a cordless drill, they've got a forward and reverse slide switch typically, some kind of a switch somewhere down here to reverse it or make it go forward. So right now with it pushed in on the left side, it's in reverse, so the chuck will spin counterclockwise. If I go to the other side and push that in, it should turn clockwise, right? And these are variable speed. You can go slow or fast, right? And these are keyless chucks, so you don't need a typical a key, and I'll show you those on another video maybe, to tighten it up. So you just hang on to this outer collar, and you can see the expanding and contracting in there to hold the drill bit. So you slip the drill bit in, hang on to the collar, make sure it's in forward, and it's tight, right? And to take the drill bit out, again, you reverse it and just hang on to that collar, and it loosens up, okay? So what I want to do is I want to get my drill bit right on that mark, and you'll feel it kind of slot into that little mark right there. I want to make sure my drill is straight up and down. Okay, I don't want to tip to the side or anything. And I want to be able to push straight down from the top. Don't push down over here on the back where the battery is and stuff. What will happen is that drill bit's going to bend and break. That's typically how we break bits. Push straight down over the top of the bit, all right? So have one finger on the trigger, the other one on top, and you got to put a little bit of pressure on it. It's not going to do it by itself, right? And you don't have to have full speed on it. Kind of ease into it a little bit. Okay, just like that. And you'll see some chips right there. You do want to be careful with those. They are very sharp. Little broom or sweep them off with something. Don't use a blower. It can blow into people's eyes or your eyes. Okay, so I'm just going to come over and I'm going to do the other one. Again, I can feel it drop into that little mark that I made. Push straight down. Okay, and pull up. Okay, let's spin it around, do the others. And if the drill doesn't drill right away, make sure you're going in the right direction. A lot of people have it in reverse and it'll go counterclockwise. All it does is spin backwards and wear out the bit. It doesn't cut anything. So make sure you're going forward. It should be spinning clockwise. Okay, we're going to come in, we've got to make some marks on these two. So center punch right on the X, give it a little tap. Okay, a little mark, come in. And if you're doing a large hole, you can always start with a small hole as a pilot and then go to bigger holes. This one's not too bad, so it's easy to do with one drill bit. Okay. Same thing on the last one. Okay. Simple. Simple, simple. Get some of the burrs off of there. All right, so here's what we're left with. Okay, panel cut, drilled, rounded. Last thing we need to do is just kind of clean off our edges with the grinder, take off any burrs from the drilling, and it's ready to start getting ready for prep for paint, or primer and paint, I should say. All right, so the last thing I want to do, with the angle grinder, sorry, things are falling. So with the angle grinder, I'm just going to come along and I'm going to clean up my edges from the plasma cut. These are actually pretty decent, but if you have any wobbles, little waves in there, you want to grind it until it's nice and flat, okay? And basically what you're doing, I can do a little demonstration here maybe, if you can see it. Let's say you cut that edge and it was all wavy, okay? You really suck at plasma cutting, right? So let's say that this is the furthest part in from what you plasma cut. What you're going to have to do then is grind everything back to meet up with that lowest part, right? You're never going to get straight just kind of grinding out here, right? You want to take everything back to your lowest point, right, in order to get it straight. So basically what you're doing is you're grinding off all your high spots, right? Keep grinding off your high spots, bringing it back until it disappears, that little low spot disappears right there, okay? We don't have that problem right here. This is pretty decent. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the face shield on. Okay. Grinder, it's got a decent disc on there. Everything's working fine. I'm going to come around to the other side and I'm just going to start grinding a little bit. Move a couple things out of the way. Now when I'm grinding the edges, I want to keep my grinder so it's vertical. The disc is going vertical. We're not going to grind this direction. I want to grind the sides in this direction. So I usually use my thumb, right? And as I've got the grinder set up like this, I mean, you can do it with your hand. It's a little awkward. I prefer to do this, right? And I'm pulling it towards myself. Seems to be the easiest way to do that. All right, so let's try a little bit. Okay, and I'm just slowing down or going over spots that are a little bit high on those. All right, and let me see if I can get an angle of this where how I'm grinding, that you can see it. Let's see. Well, let me grind the rest and then I'll show you. Sorry, my camera just flew off. So if you notice, when I'm grinding, I'm below the center, and I've got it tipped a little bit so that it's not flat up against the metal, it's tipped a little bit. So it's just using a small portion of the grinder, right? You're not using the whole disc, you're just doing a little portion because you got to tip it a little bit and go below center. Okay, that gives the best cut, the best grind. Let me hit the corners. Obviously, if this is your first time, it's going to take a lot longer, especially if your edges are a little bit wavy from the plasma cut. So, like I said, the cleaner your plasma cut, the quicker it's going to be to prep your panel. All right, so I've smoothed out the edges, taken off any rough edges from the plasma. Now, from the drilling, I want to take and grind both sides to take off the little burr that's left. So for that, we keep it flat. Now, when I keep it flat, it's not completely flat, of course. I've got to tip just a little bit. Otherwise, it wants to jump around if it's totally flat. So tip it a little bit. Okay, that just takes the burr off, and I want to flip it over and do the same thing. Now, obviously this was a panel that was used years ago for a little demonstration. We're not worried about the back, obviously, just the other side. But I want to take the burrs off. Okay. Now the last thing I want to do before we get it ready for primer is take any little burrs off the edge on top and bottom. And what I'm doing with that is I'm taking the grinder and I'm tipping it at about a 45-degree angle, right? It's not flat, it's not straight up and down, it's in between. So that's about a 45-degree angle. And I'm just going to give it a quick little pass just to take off any little burrs. Okay, and check it, feel it, moves a little more, grind a little more. And the same thing on the top side. Okay. Now what I'm trying not to do is grind it too much at an angle, because if you do both sides at an angle, you'll end up with a really sharp knife point edge, which we don't want, right? We just want something that's not going to cut you when you're handling it. So if you get it too sharp, come back over it and grind it back again vertically to take off any sharp edges. Basically, we're just trying to be safe. I don't want anybody getting hurt, because you will be handling these a lot. A lot of people will be walking past them. You don't want to get cut on anything. All right. So there's our panel, ready to go. And you can see it's still got some paint and primer on there from whatever was on here before. So I'll end up sanding that and I'll show that. But as far as the fabrication, cut, rounded, drilled, deburred, ready to go for primer. All right. There you go.